You're listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Here are your hosts, Fran Chismar and Tom Kinesic.
Welcome back to The Buzz, brought to you by the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. I am Fran Chismar.
And I'm Tom Kinesic, and today we are buzzing into episode 81. And before we get into the meat of things,
Yes,
there is something we have to address, Fran.
Oh.
And that's how independently we both became bearded men.
You know, when we went to the Adirondacks, I went a few days without shaving. And it's the first time I went without shaving in probably 5 years. And I forgot how much, I had a pretty long beard.
Yeah,
and
you did.
I didn't like how gray it had become. So I shaved it, but short. I'm like, wow, it's not that bad. Short. I kind of like it. I'm going to grow it back. And look, here we are.
Yeah, mine was out of pure laziness. It's one of the things my dad, he used to give me a really hard time over that. I was like, but he was raised as in the 50s and 60s. You woke up, you shaved every morning, and that's just not what my generation does. And so yeah, I don't shave every morning. It's like I'll shave every once in a while, and I'll like just keep it trimmed, I guess, in between. But yeah, I just hadn't done it. It's just been like my mornings have been a little bit tighter than usual, so I just hadn't done it. And then I had a dinner I was going to, and I'm like, I gotta clean this up, and I don't have time to just shave the whole thing. I was already like, we have to leave in 15 minutes, and I just got home and had to shower and change and everything. So yeah, then I just kind of trimmed it up.
I will say it is partially out of laziness to not have to constantly shave. And it is November, which is no shave November typically, right? So it seemed like a good time to do it. But I'm enjoying it. We'll see how long it lasts. I'm not. I've always had facial hair for over 20 years of some sort. It's getting a lot more.
Just leave a mustache. We should both become mustache men, and then
that is not happening.
It's a look that's just I guess is an acquired taste. Only certain people can have that look.
I will say this: Agatha and I went out to brunch on Sunday. And this place was packed because it was right before a football game as well. It was really hard pressed to find one person without a beard, one male without a beard.
Yeah.
And the gentleman that didn't have the beard did have a mustache. So every man in that entire place had facial hair, which is really weird. All right, one more side tangent on this. So I worked at another place where I would maybe only shave once a week, and being in management, I got talked to about it. And I was saying that I had a lot of issues, like skin issues with shaving. And I actually had one of the vice presidents say, maybe you were never taught properly how to shave, and went through, he bought me shave products like pre-shave oil, all these things, and went over with me the proper way to shave. And it turned me into, like, for a long time, like I loved shaving. It went from something I absolutely hated to something I loved the ritual and routine of, like getting up, shaving, or shaving the night before. But yeah, I was just getting a little lazy this time.
But before I have to hear it again from Bill Young and Bladen Rothhauser, how we talk about all this random stuff, we should get into the meat of today. And we do have a lot of meaty subjects.
We do
coming up, and I guess especially how you can deal with some of those meaty subjects. But we always like to kick it off outside of one episode. We always like to kick it off with a segment we call That's Hot. So let's start there.
Hot. All right. We never figured this out ahead of time. Would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first?
You go first.
All right. So, and again, one of those things where I have no idea if this plant's been chosen before. At some point, like you said, now that we know that there's a files on the website, I don't know when we're going to get a chance to do this.
Yeah, when we have the time, we'll eventually utilize that section on our Facebook page, the files section, where we can put a list together of what we've actually chosen in the past.
And it's not that I remember doing this plant, but we're limited at this time of the year of what
Yeah.
what looks hot. So I kind of feel like we had to have done it at some point. I just don't know. But my choice is Christmas fern, which is Polystichum acrostichoides, which is a facultative upland shade tolerant fern. And it's named Christmas fern because it holds its green color till right around Christmas or just after Christmas. So it looks great, even though a lot of things are going dormant. It still looks like an oasis. If you find a patch in the wild, like it stands out because it's still very green. It's native from Maine to Florida, southwest to Texas. It does attract, is it ruffed grouse or ruffled grouse?
Rough.
It is ruffed grouse?
Yes.
My whole life, I'm today years old. I always thought it was ruffled grouse.
Yeah.
The Cherokee used Christmas fern to treat stomachache and pneumonia. And toothaches and chills. The Iroquois also used the plant to treat a wide range of medicinal or medical problems, including rheumatism, consumption, convulsions, and fevers. So I always like adding that. I think it's interesting.
And I did not add that to mine. I'm sure what I chose this week does have some medicinal benefits historically, but I didn't look into them. And I chose another one that's a little bit different, kind of like you did 2 weeks ago with the Eupator immaculatum. I chose swamp rose, which is Rosa palustris, and it would just happen to strike me when I was walking through the nursery, making a video for a YouTube account, and I kind of just walked by and I'm like, ooh, this looks really cool right now. And it's when you look up on our website and it has the fall color section, it just says red. But this was way more than red. There was yellows, there was oranges, there was bright pinks, there was deep reds, light reds, fire reds. It was just like a really unique mix of colors that I wasn't expecting to see out of something that I just didn't have considered having noticeable fall color.
You know, I think the name swamp rose throws people off to almost, it gives it like a negative stigmatism, just like it's like a thorny wetland rose.
Yes.
That's just kind of like there
to
be a
nuisance. It is thorny.
It is thorny.
It's multi-stemmed and has a lot of thorns, and it's one of those ones that you don't like to move around in the nursery because you're going to come away with a bunch of little cuts and scratches.
Totally.
But it's really a beautiful plant, and it fills a niche. It grows in those swampy areas where you have a wetter area. You can put this, it's going to thrive in a lot of cases. Has really, not that it's a rose, but it's not that conventional English style rose that everyone thinks of with like the big red petals and all that. It's just a native rose flower.
It resembles more a shrub rose, which it is. It's not like a hybrid tea. It's a shrub rose.
So and those flowers are pink, and then it has red rose hips as well, which I believe you can harvest. And Kelly Gill's tip was make sure you try and get the hairs off because they can be a little unpalatable. But
that's a great choice. Two great choices, and it's it's. I think especially this time of the year, it's important to point out the things that still look good. And again, it's just re-envisioning what beauty is. And it's like it's with a lot, especially in the Northeast where everything is where we're at pretty dormant. It's nice to find those little gems, and I think both of these are good gems.
So, but no, those two good choices. And moving right along, let's go into this week's botany-based current events. Of course, we make it a competition. Let's move along to this or that. You can get with this, or you can get with that. So controversy this time.
Controversy, probably more votes than we've ever had total, or close to it. I would think. I think really the change in Facebook groups that people can vote without joining. Changed the amount of people that interact. But we do have a winner, and the winner is me, 20 to 11. And to be honest, I would not have guessed that. So if mine was on the invasive study on trout as it relates to an invasive species, and yours was on the Dayton Airport. And as far as experimenting with predators.
I was following a theme the week before. I talked about the Rockford Airport near Chicago, or in Illinois. I shouldn't say it's near Chicago. I'm not sure where Rockford is, but
I think it's like an hour outside.
I do know it's in Illinois. But so I kept on that theme, and I guess in my vaccine-induced haze, I usually look at the dates. I do look at the dates, and I looked at the dates, and for some reason, I thought that said it was published on November 5th, of 2021. And then later that evening, in fact, when I was getting ready to go to this dinner, that I had to shave a little for, I had pulled up my phone and saw on Facebook, and Benjamin Vogt has his page, Milk the Weed.
Yeah.
He says, "Oh, watch out! The Dayton airport article's going around again. Just so you know, this was like many years old, and it didn't end well."
Oh,
So I'm like, "Oh, I could have sworn I saw it said November 5th, 2021. Looked again, it said November like 26th of 2014." And I'm like, "Oh, this was pretty old." And so I did look more into it, and I guess I don't know, I couldn't find much that happened with what they were studying, but eventually they looked to the city wanted to expand the airport into that ground that they were planning on putting in prairie if they hadn't put it in prairie, and actually encroaching on other prairie areas, and then threatening prairie areas that were outside the grounds as well.
Gotcha.
And now that was from 2019. I know that they were successful. Well, an environmentalist group, from an environmentalist standpoint, it was successful in getting the airport to not expand as of 2019. And the interest group that came in that wanted to make a big investment, they pulled out because of all the feedback they were getting. I couldn't, I guess I probably didn't look hard enough to see what's happened in the last 2 years since then. But yeah, I was pretty embarrassed. I'm like, oh, this is an old article that didn't have the effects that I thought it would, which makes sense, because when I was reading, I'm like, this sounds really familiar with something I've read before. I just assumed it was the article I read 2 weeks earlier. But yeah, so sorry about that, for throwing something up that was older.
I don't know if that's what led to the vote shift. I'm just really shocked. The article I chose was a little selfish, and I didn't choose it as an article that I really thought would win. If that makes sense. Like like it fascinated me, but I didn't think I would win. So I'm kind of shocked that I won, and I won by that amount, which just proves I know nothing.
But it's okay, because we do have 2 new articles that I double checked mine to make sure it was current.
Oh, I didn't double check mine. I don't know.
There's still time. You can do it right now. You can choose for me to go first. You can check.
No, I'm gonna go first. I'm gonna go first, and if it's controversial in the respect that it's old, then I'll deal with it. But the name of my article is "How Native American Plant Meds Treat Pain and Diarrhea," and that was on futurity.com, and it was by UC Irvine. And I really thought this tied in well, like we just talked about it with Christmas Fern, and a lot of the times we do this, or That's Hot. We talk about a lot of the Native American uses. So
and Fran, you are safe. It came out on November 18th of 2021. So
all right, good.
Very current.
The funny thing is, whenever we find a Native American use, it always seems to be for diarrhea.
So,
not all that. It just seems to happen a lot.
It does seem to happen a lot. It seems like everything that you read, oh yeah, this was used to cure diarrhea by Native Americans, and it just seems
maybe it was a more common.
Native Americans had a lot of diarrhea, or
it was a more.
It was
common,
just they were wanting to try everything to see if they could stop this.
All right. And before I read this article, I will say, because we've been researching and doing prep work for the upcoming podcast, and that's one of the things that we want to focus on for each plant.
Yeah.
It is amazing to me, how many plants, like elderberry, like you can eat the berries, you can eat the flowers, but the rest of the plant is poisonous and toxic to humans. It's amazing how many plants. So if you think of all the things that have been tried, how many people had to die
or just get really sick,
get really sick to realize the berry is delicious or the flower is delicious, but don't you dare eat the leaf, or the leaf you can make tea, but you can't use any other part of the plant. It just amazes me, because I just think about the amount of people that had to get ill.
I can't remember the name of the doctor. He was called doctor. I don't know if he's an actual doctor or a fake doctor, but they were presenting something on vegetarian diets versus meat focused diets, and saying how important it was to eat organ meats, because that held a lot of the nutrients, and because they were filter organs in a sense, it held a lot of the extra nutrients that were filtered out through people's diets or through their digestive tract from what they were eating. but he really keyed in on saying that every like nutrient you need you can get from meat, but not every nutrient you need you can get from plants. Yeah. And how the animal that was eating all this stuff kind of put it in a way that you could digest it for you instead of you eating the plant and figuring out. So yeah, I forget exactly the comment that you said that you wanted to say
the amount of people, but even
the amount of people that died. Yeah, I guess that is part of it. Yeah, let the cow figure it out.
But even for me, like I have a lot, I would probably eat more vegan, except for I have a lot of allergies to nuts and seeds, and I have to really read the ingredients for a lot of these things, and it's almost easier for me to just be a meat eater because of my allergies. But I don't know if allergies were as prevalent back then too. Like if someone ate something and died, they had an allergic reaction, how long would it take for someone else to eat it again, eat it again, to know that it was just him, or that person? But all right, anyway, so I'm going to read the bulk of the article. I did edit some of it out. It's not the entire article, but I wanted to make sure I got a good thing. I'm going to choose to go first, but the researchers reveal a striking pattern following a functional screen of extracts from plants collected in Muir Woods National Monument in coastal redwood forest land in California. The study, published in Frontiers in Physiology, found plants that activated the KCNQ 2/3 potassium channel, a protein that passes electrical impulses in the brain and other tissues, has a long history of use by Native Americans as topical analgesics to treat conditions such as insect bites, stings, sores, and burns. Less intuitively, the same plants that activated this were used as folk analgesics, were often used in gastronomical aids, especially for preventing diarrhea. Done in collaboration with the U.S. National Park Service, the study illustrates how much there is still to learn from medicinal practices of Native Americans, and how by applying mechanistic approaches, we can highlight their ingenuity, provide molecular rationalizations for their specific uses of plants, and potentially uncover new medicines from plants. Says Jeffrey Abbott, professor in the Department of Physiology and Biophysics at the University of California, Irvine School of Medicine. The KCNQ 2/3 is present in nerve cells that sense pain, and its activation would be expected to soothe pain by disfavoring transmission of the pain signal. The breakthrough finding came when the team discovered that the same plant extracts that activate this have the opposite effect on the related intestinal potassium channel, KCNQ1 and KCNE3. This finding is striking, as previous studies on modern medicines showed that KCNQ1 and KCNE3 inhibitors can prevent diarrhea. The Abbott Lab currently has undertaken a much broader screen of native U.S. plants towards these goals. Already, they've shown that, do you know how to pronounce that word? Quercetin and tannic and gallic acids present in several of the plants studied explain many of the beneficial effects of the plants. The team also identified binding sites on the channel proteins that produces the effect. With this knowledge at the molecular level of compounds that can activate versus inhibit closely related human ion channel proteins, future work can be directed at improving drug specificity and therefore safety while retaining efficacy. Efficacy, yeah. Wow. More specifically, medicinal chemistry approaches can be applied to further optimize the plant compounds with the goal of treating pain and secretory diarrhea. According to the CDC, diarrheal diseases account for 1 in 9 child deaths worldwide. Incredibly, diarrhea kills over 2,000 children every day worldwide, more than AIDS, malaria, and measles combined. That stat blew my mind. I didn't realize that it was as deadly. It's something that we all joke about, but I didn't realize that it was something as deadly as it is worldwide.
Yeah.
And
well, it's so incredibly dehydrating.
Yeah.
That it can really, things can go sour very fast.
But it's nice to see, Native Americans had a much different connectivity with the land, and a lot of these uses, as science comes in and says scientifically these things are better for you. It's just amazing how much more correct they were in a lot of cases. I even think back to, just early Americana people making up tonics like Coca-Cola,
Yeah.
it's like this will make this, without the properties, it was just basically passing drugs to you to feel better or feel a certain way. But this was actually like they were much more closer than we maybe initially or our forefathers thought. And I like that the science is coming back around to this and saying, hey, a lot of these native plants may have healing properties that we're overlooking for some of these synthetic applications that are being created. So I just thought it was interesting with all the conversations.
No, it definitely is. And it, like we pointed out at the end of the article, it's a major problem worldwide. And the solutions today tend to be very, while scientific, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm blanking. Basically, they're man-made. They aren't natural. And that's not saying one is better than the other, but if we're able to get more, if it's easier to acquire these treatments because there's natural choices, and now you just have more of it out there, well, that's an overall good thing. So if it means we can look at Christmas fern, for instance, and say, oh, we can use this, and maybe it's not as effective, maybe it's more effective, but maybe it's not as effective, but now we can prescribe this Christmas fern pill or drops or whatever we create out of it, and it cuts into that supply chain that we can then spread out throughout the world. Well, that's a good thing overall.
Or I guess what's probably more likely is they'll create a synthesized compound replicate, because aspirin, I know I can't remember which plant aspirin was.
Is that willow?
I think I can't remember if it was willow, but I know it was something present in plants that they synthesized. So maybe something like that could happen. But I just, I wonder how many plants we've lost or that are in danger that have properties that we're completely unaware of, that if it was known might.
Realistically, maybe we held on to them because those were the ones that we chose.
Yeah.
And that's we lost the ones that we hadn't found uses for.
That's true.
But we kept the ones that we know that's what happened with a lot of Native American cultures, that they kept the plants around that they found useful. And they were cultivating the ground like we are today. Not at the same scale, but like we are today.
But it was being done. So so that's mine. So I'm curious to see what you have this week.
Yeah, so and mine is very timely. It came out on November 1st of this year.
Oh, okay.
So,
all right.
And it was from Grower Talks, and the title was "Keep Good Seeds from Going Bad" by Jerry Gorchels.
Okay.
And it was a little more technical than since it was in Grower Talks, it's really geared towards greenhouses already.
Yeah.
But there's some really good information that I wanted to pass along to our listeners who might not be as technical with their own seed saving if they're getting into that. So I'll read a little bit, and then I'm going to chime in my 2 cents every here and there. So the article starts. First of all, I wanted to start by saying that it's best to use all the seed you purchase for the season. Carryover seed isn't a good practice for the best quality. Leave the seed storage issues to the breeder, producers, and seed distribution. They have cyclical germ or seed germ testing in place to make sure that they have the best seed quality, which is a really good point to start off with.
Totally.
We're in a place where we don't buy seed as a nursery, but if I'm buying vegetable seed at home, I have the luxury. I could store it properly if I chose to. What ends up happening is I tend to just kind of throw it in the open envelope, and I only use half the seed, and I throw the envelope in the fridge or in a drawer or something like that. I'm not storing it in the best conditions to maintain that germination percentage.
I was going to say, do you know how many half-open seed packets end up in in kitchen drawers? Where you're like, oh yeah, look at that. I think this is like 2-3 years old.
And while it may still have germination possibilities the following year or 3 years or 4 years from now, like I tried out this past spring, that's not always the case. So if you have the luxury to do so, if you're only buying a few seed packets for a vegetable garden or flower seeds, sometimes it's better to just get it every year and spend a couple more dollars every year instead of saving some of that seed, just because the producer is going to have the technology to preserve that seed and maintain its germination possibilities for a longer period of time than you will at home. So that's one thing to consider. But if you want to do this yourself, or you're collecting your own seed, basically what he ruled into next and said there's an easy equation a grower can follow for seed storage conditions. This involves temperature in Fahrenheit and the relative humidity percent. These two numbers should never add up to over 100. Ideally, the temperature for longer lasting seed storage should be 40 degrees. The relative humidity should be somewhere between 25 and 40%. Higher relative humidity can cause faster degradation of the seed. Lower relative humidity can actually degrade the seed by drying it out. Remember, the seed endosperm is a soft tissue that you do not want to dry out. If it gets too dry, you'll run into issues. If it's too wet, if it's too humid, that's when you can have like mold and fungal issues start up. With our seed cooler at the nursery, we have like a big seed vault, actually multiple, and we keep those our dry seed storage. We shoot for 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 50% humidity. We don't and that's at the highest for same reasons. We don't want it to get too dry because then you ruin your viability of the seed. Too wet or too humid, that's when you're going to have molding and all kinds of other issues that make it unsaleable. So that's always been our target. Our germination cooler, I think we keep it 38. And because those tend to be in sealed bags, we don't have to worry about humidity as much because they're airtight. So,
and you don't want them to start sprouting.
Exactly. That's the other big reason with the temperature is if it's too hot, then you can have, I think they get it. Actually, it's the next paragraph in here. But so the other thing to consider is a lot of places don't have seed vaults, but they do have something that just about everyone has at home, and that's a refrigerator. So another thing to keep in mind when I'm saying all this stuff is you don't need to have the most technical. You have something that's pretty technologically advanced in your kitchen already, or in your dorm room or wherever. You have it already. It's just utilizing it the proper way. So back to the article. Let's go back to the air temperature and relative humidity relationship. Warm air holds more humidity, but when the air temperature drops, that humidity is transferred into water in the form of condensation. This condensation can be detrimental to the quality of the seed storage. If the seed packets are sealed, not as critical. When the seed packets are opened and the unused seed is put back into unregulated relative humidity storage, condensation will form in the seed packet, accelerating the degradation of the seed. This condensation will also cause issues when the seed is brought back out to sow. Seed will stick together, pellets will crumble as they dry, etc. There's some issues that can happen for that. And I've seen that firsthand where you get a little bit too much moisture in that bag and all of a sudden you pull it out and it's not breaking up. They aren't individual seeds anymore. They're kind of clumps. It makes it a lot harder to get uniform dispersal with that seed. What you want to think about next is how we handle and control the unwanted humidity in your refrigerator. The seeds we receive are usually in cardboard boxes that line up really nicely in the refrigerator. But one option is to take those seed packets out of the boxes and store them in tightly sealed containers, like a Tupperware or a Ziploc bag, those kind of things. Something with Loctite lids, something that the air is not going to get in and out of as easily. Now you've taken the humidity of the refrigerator out of the equation. It's only the humidity that's inside that little box. So if you can make sure that it's dry when you seal it and it's not a humid day in your kitchen, you seal it out there, you put it in the fridge. Now it doesn't matter if you have lots of nice lettuce and fruit and all that stuff that's going to raise your fridge humidity because it's in that locked container. And then if you want to have even more control over the humidity, is what they recommend is lining those containers, the bottoms of them, with a little bit of uncooked rice. Same concept is with your phone when you drop it in the toilet, like I have before. You drop it in a pond or wherever. You get your phone wet, you put it in a bag of rice, it sucks up some of that extra moisture that's now in your phone. Same concept here. If you have it in rice or over top of rice, that's going to take up some of that moisture. So those are the real keys. Now, if you're collecting your own seed at home, is just you got to keep it. You got to get dried out first. Which you can often do just by leaving it on a, not so windy place out in the sun. And then it's making sure it stays dry. Which, like I said, you can put it if it's dry, you can just put it in a Ziploc bag, keep it in your fridge. And now you don't have to worry about the humidity changing. You don't really have to worry about the temperature changing unless you have kids and they like to leave the fridge doors open, which you should be yelling at them already not to do that. This is just one more reason that they can't leave the fridge doors open. But you can save a lot of your own seed for a long, long time. Like when I say a long time, I'm not just talking from 1 year to the next. I'm talking sometimes 3, 4, 5 years depending on the species. There's some species that don't hold up as well,
Yeah.
but there's others that can really hold up for a long time. Another component that they didn't talk about in the article is actually stratifying your seed this way. And that's actually putting it in a moist medium, whether it's sand or soil or peat or something like that. And you can actually stratify your seed in a somewhat more moist environment that's going to help break down that seed coat. And you're giving it the cold like you would get from if it was in the ground outside, you're getting that cold.
Yeah.
And well, things like milkweed need at least 30 days of cold moist stratification for a lot of different kinds of milkweed. So, and sometimes it's 60 days, sometimes it's 90 days. So, and if you don't get that, they're far less likely to germinate. There may be some, but way fewer of them will germinate. So that's another thing you can do with your fridge at home is just stratify seed in your fridge.
These are all great tips. I think more than anything, when we get questions, we get more questions about seed and storage and stratification than probably anything else.
Oh yeah.
And which is good because that means people are being proactive and trying to grow some of these things that they can't find on the market.
Yep. And was it Prayer Moon has a great guide for stratifying seed because they sell many seed packets. They have a really good guide for how to stratify a lot of this stuff at home, which I don't think you need to buy a packet to actually get it. I think it's just on their website, and they have little guides for each species. And at the same time, everyone has their own little techniques. Like our propagator here, he has different techniques, and he doesn't like to share them. And I'm sure there's other folks that everyone has their little techniques where they figured out something that's a little bit different than someone else, and they have a little bit more success. So have fun with this too. Try different things, experiment a little bit. If you have 100 seeds and you only want 20 plants out of it, well, still try and grow all 100, but maybe try 20 like this and 20 like that. And then if you have extra, give them away.
Yeah. So, yeah. Like the seed library.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's perfect to trade and share, kind of like the seed exchange at the Native Plant Society in New Jersey, exactly, all those types of things. So
yeah, but there's ways you can do this at home. You don't need super technical equipment. The big things is just maintaining that humidity and that and the temperature. If you can maintain those, it's already a lot more technical than just leaving it in a drawer and anything like that. So,
yeah. Awesome. 2 great articles. And of course, we're going to put this up on the Facebook group. You no longer have to join to vote. You can go to the Facebook group and look for the poll. But 2 really great articles. I think I got a 3-week win streak on you, Tom.
I think you do. It might even be longer than that.
Tom needs this one, but make sure you vote because. And of course, the choice is yours. So, listener shoutouts. You ready? You want to go to that next?
Yeah, let's do it. But I'm going to let you go first.
All right, no problem.
Listener shout out.
So I had the opportunity. I was invited to an event at Sourlands Conservancy. Carolyn Klauba has been a guest of ours a couple times. She calls in quite regularly on the question and comment line. And she was on Women in Ecology, that rooted discussion, and also one about Sourland Conservancy. And this event was to thank, they had just planted their 10,000th tree this year. Was it this year? I don't know if it was overall or this year, but it was an incredible volunteer effort. And they were having a gathering to say thank you to all the volunteers and all the people that made it happen. And I met so many of the volunteers that are doing such wonderful work and have so much passion. And so many of them mentioned that they were listeners of the podcast. And I just want to say thank you to everyone who came up and spent some time. I had some great conversations, and I want to thank all of you for doing great work. We appreciate that you acknowledge us, that you listen, and you get a lot of great tips. We appreciate the fact that you're volunteering your time. And there's a lot of, time is a hard thing to have excess of, and the fact that that's how you're choosing to use it, especially for such a great organization. We can't thank you enough for doing such great work, and we want to thank you.
Yeah. So, and then we got another 5-star review, which is fantastic, which is a new listener from Indiana.
Okay.
Whose name on here is NDWWB fan, which eventually I put together. It means Notre Dame women's basketball fan.
Oh, I kept going to North Dakota. I even think.
Yeah. So,
Notre Dame.
when it said Indiana, that's when
that makes sense. Yeah.
South Bend, Indiana, Notre Dame, and they actually have a fantastic basketball team, and won a championship back in 2018.
Wow.
So.
Wow.
I don't know if I need to give any more compliments. You're already riding high. Your team's doing great. But no, we really appreciate all the listens we get from all over the place. It just blows our mind every time we're like, oh, we have people listening from Indiana and South Carolina and California and Washington and all over the place. We thought this would be a regional thing, and yeah, it's pretty cool.
We actually, I know we haven't talked about this in a while, but we have people listening in 85 different countries now.
Wow.
Which that completely blows my mind when I look at the charts and see how many countries were actually ranked. And I'm like, really? Like that's it really blows me away. And I guess we should say thank you to everyone, because it's very flattering and humbling to see that. And we can't thank you enough. Speaking of which, I have no complaints. I thought that was a good segue to say.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But we do have a phone call that I know a lot of people have been anxious to hear.
We do.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions, and I want to have them answered immediately.
It's a simple question.
No, I didn't hear you. What was your question?
So we did manage to get our 3 picks. I had picked a rendition of Saul from Alyssa Lewis. You had picked one from Dash Lewis.
Mm-hmm.
And then our listeners voted for Deborah Rosenthal for the mugshot sketch of Saul. Overwhelmingly.
Which may have been the most realistic, if we're really being honest.
Probably. So we did get the 3 selections to Saul, and he did call in. It's been a long time. We haven't heard from Saul in a while, but he's been very busy. So I'm going to play the call. I do want to just say, so you don't think there's an issue on your end, at some point during his call, Saul muted himself for about 4 or 5 seconds. So it's going to cut out, and it's going to cut back into the middle of a conversation. That I never thought I would lose so much track in a conversation in 4 seconds, but I did on this one. I wish I knew what was said, but with that being said, here is the winner.
Hello, gentlemen, my fellow pine nut Tom. Mr. English Muffin Thomas, and of course, my good dear friend Pam Balam, the answer man. Fellas, I am calling. This is your friend Saul, who I know you know, with exciting news for all of us, I think, in the Pinelands Native community. Now, Pam, I know we have spoke about the topic of sustainable farmlands and agriculture, and with your inspiration, I have changed my estate into a completely sustainable farm this year, focused on native plants and also allowing the deer and the wild turkeys to run around. Now, Thomas, I believe we spoke about this back in May, that I began feeding the turkeys stale bread and celery so that they would already have a stuffing, if you will, for Thanksgiving. And I'm very excited from that. And I advise all the listeners who might want to play along on that for next. Here with the quince and, of course, the leftover crop from the medlar tree. And we are making preserves and jam. And I'm not quite sure what the difference is, but somebody's stewing up something. And I think it's the preserves have the fruit and the jam. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to enjoy that for Thanksgiving, as well as the wild turkeys. And of course, the cranberry, gentlemen. Many people do not know that the cranberry and its cousin, the craisin, is also a native plant from New Jersey. And if they float, they're good. And if not, let them sink and don't eat it. That's always been my philosophy for everything. So, gentlemen, as I drive around the estate, which is now a sustainable farm, in my blunderbuss, I'm very excited. Guys, it's like someone was reading my mind. The photograph, what is it? The painting, the artwork, gentlemen, of me, Saul Rosenberg, by Alyssa Lewis is the best one I've ever seen in my life. It's like she knew exactly who I was. And I don't know if there are photos of me on the face page, or there should be, but Alyssa Lewis, the famous artist who I hope will have a wonderful career now. And I thank you. This is Saul thanking you from the bottom of my heart. I hope this will appear on T-shirts, and fellas, I would like one, please. Thank you. But Alyssa, you captured the essence.
And that's where it gets cut.
Yeah. And we were hoping to have Saul on live to do this. We wanted to get him on and have him on our Zoom so people could go on to YouTube and see him. But actually, moments before he was supposed to log on, he slipped and hit his noggin, and he actually made that call on the ambulance ride. Out of our lives.
Exactly. So one of these days we'll get Saul on a Zoom. We'll see if he can get his webcam to work.
Yes. Yeah.
But congratulations, Alyssa Lewis.
Yeah,
so
that's a pretty high compliment. The best picture that's ever been drawn on him, because he said he had a
Warhol
and a Garfunkel and all kinds of stuff. And,
and he's saying this is the best one. He captured its essence. Now, I felt part of the reason, and other people had mentioned this in the Facebook group, that it kind of, to me, drew on Hunter S. Thompson, that I kind of picture Saul being a little Hunter S. Thompson-esque. And I thought it was interesting that Alyssa said she didn't know who Hunter S. Thompson was. So go and read Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and you'll have a good understanding. But we will get a Keep It Native long sleeve shirt out to you. So we'll be in touch just to get a size. And congratulations to all of the other entries who got picked.
Yeah, we had a lot of fun actually looking
really
at a lot of these, and it was a big hit in the office as well, as we shared some of our favorites with them.
We shared them with people at work, with family, with other listeners. It was a lot of fun. Actually, I don't know if you know this. I actually have an original Alyssa Lewis sketch.
I didn't know that. No.
Yeah, I do. I had to barter for it.
Oh, okay.
But I have a sketch of a red knot that we're going to have matted and framed and hung up in the house. So
Awesome.
I'm very, very happy about that. So very talented. Thank you so much. I think we have to at least touch on a couple things Saul said, because he said he was driving around in a blunderbuss. I had to look it up. A blunderbuss is like an old-fashioned, like, I don't know if it's a gun. Like, you know,
I know
like
it's
it looks like a horn on the end. It's got the big flared. Is that a muzzle? No.
It's got the big flare, like it's a cartoonish, like Elmer Fudd-ish.
Yeah, that's a blunderbuss.
Yep.
Like, because I'm like, what's a blunderbuss? And I looked it up. I was like, what? I wonder what he was actually riding around then. But
who knows? Like I said, he was in an ambulance, so maybe he got confused.
But have you ever heard of the medlar fruit before?
I have not. No.
I only had it mentioned to me once before, because it was someone who was interviewing position at a former place that I worked, and he was saying that the nursery industry was completely missing the mark, and he was going to be the king of the medlar tree, which I guess is a European and Asiatic tree with fruit. But I guess his prophecy was wrong, because not too many people have heard of it. But it's nice to hear that Saul has turned his estate into a sustainable farm.
Yeah, he's really come a long way since
he really has.
I'm not sure how his turkey diet is gonna go. I'm not sure. I don't think that's how it works. But
I don't think it works that way either. But I'm curious. I'm hoping Saul will at least follow up with us to let us know how his Thanksgiving meal is, because I see the Thanksgiving turkeys having him for a meal instead of the other way around, given how accident prone he is. But congratulations again, Alyssa, and again, thank you everyone. We had a blast with this. So I would like to make this into a T-shirt if possible.
Yeah, I have to figure out how to do it.
I think if we Photoshop out the white and make it maybe like a PNG, we can have it.
We should be able to do it.
Yeah, so we can. I think we can get that done. So congratulations, everyone. Do you have a Grow Read a book?
I don't have any books this week.
All right.
But playing off the topic of Thanksgiving, if you went back a year ago, we had a Thanksgiving episode that talked about all of the things that may have been on that first Thanksgiving table, and whether it was an actual thing or not. And This year we went in a slightly different direction, really keeping in line with Fran's theme today, and that was some of the things you might want to use, some of the native plants you might want to use after Thanksgiving, whether you have a little bit too much to eat or a little bit too much to drink, or you just need to get rid of that headache that your uncle has really been drilling into your head all dinner. So we had a couple things that we had a little bit more fun with, and of things that you might want to use after Thanksgiving. And we'll start with the headaches ones. I don't want to get into our list of antidiuretics because it's way too long. But some of the things that we found that Native Americans and early Americans used for headaches were cardinal flower leaf tea and willow bark was another one.
All right. Awesome. I think those are great. So for headaches, oh, you just said.
I just said headaches.
Never mind.
I skipped ahead.
But I was thinking we should probably add, because we did talk about Christmas fern earlier, that it can be used for that and also consumption. But we'll go to that. How about we go with gout? If you eat so much that you're coming down with gout, that goldenrods, junipers, and wild roses are all symptoms to help relieve treatments that you can use to help with symptoms of gout.
So, which, to be honest, I don't really know what gout is. It's one of those things you hear about, but you don't. I know it has to do with like indulgent eating.
But like I think it's like a swelling of the feet. Like it's hard to walk, and I don't know. I can't remember how it ties in, but I've known a few people that had issues with gout and they had to change their diet and how they were eating, and their feet would become so swollen and painful that they had trouble walking.
Interesting. Yeah. Some of the things that help with flu symptoms were Rudbeckia fulgida.
Okay.
And I forget what part of it
was it a tea?
I think it was just a tea out of the
leaves.
They said echinacea root really help with flu symptoms, which flu symptoms I kind of equated to some hangover symptoms too. They tend to go in line a lot of times. Elderberries,
which are supposed to be high in antioxidants.
Exactly. Boneset.
Okay.
Ginseng.
All right.
Which is American ginseng.
Which makes sense.
Your goldenrods again. Hemlock tea.
Okay.
Could help.
That actually sounds pretty good.
Sassafras, and then yarrow and the dried inner bark from black cherries.
Oh, wow.
So
that sounds pretty good. So I'm looking to see what I have to choose from. I'll go with flatulence if which, you know what, let's face it, it's happening at Thanksgiving, whether you wanted to or not. But
everyone loosens up their belt a little bit, and you got to make room for pie.
You do have to make So two of the things that can help are tea made out of spotted horsemint. And I think some of our listeners actually make horsemint tea. We've seen that in the Facebook group.
I question that because my brother makes a lot of spotted horsemint tea, and I wouldn't say it's helped him.
Listen, we need some feedback from our listeners who use any of these remedies for flatulence. We need to know if they've worked or not. And then the other one is sweet flag. I don't remember how that one how it's used, but
and a lot of these when I was looking them up, it just said this was used. It didn't really always say how it was used. Like I know with the headaches, when going back to willow bark, it said you could either just chew right on the bark, or you could make a tea out of it if you wanted something that was a bit more palatable. But yeah, they said it's as easy as just chewing on the bark.
And that's the plant that had the natural aspirin in it.
Yep.
Correct. So that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then for our diarrhea medicines, it was Rudbeckia fulgida again, the stem pith from soft rush,
which I thought was really interesting. Yeah.
The inner bark from musclewood, and then making a red maple tea.
Awesome.
Some of the things that would help with that, and along with so many other things that we've mentioned at other times.
I thought it was very interesting because red maple tea, I believe, came up in the Facebook group, and it was Alyssa Lewis that, I think she was reading a book and they were talking about sugar encrusted maple leaves.
Yeah.
And she was looking for a recipe. I looked also, and I could only find the same things she found which was deep fried maple leaves, which I think that's something we're going to have to try in here.
Yeah.
I'm for anything deep fried.
Yeah. We can check it out.
And I should just cross-reference that with the flatulence. But those are some great Native American remedies with native plants for some things you may experience on Thanksgiving.
And
I think it's a good tie-in.
There's so much of this on online too. You really do have to check your sources. Like this one all came from a website called Legends of America /NA-remedy, and that's where I found this. And I think it's credible in a way, but at the same time, they aren't telling you exactly how to use it. So if you want to make a goldenrod tea to help with flu symptoms or to help with gout, make sure you're finding multiple credible sources on how to do that. Not everyone can be Sam Thayer, where they're really going into the historical archives and then interviewing people and then saying, you know what, some people say this will kill you, and some people say it's really good. I'm gonna try it. We can't all be doing
and we just had the
you gotta make sure you're doing your good research on this kind of stuff.
And some of these plants, I'm trying to remember which plant specifically. I don't know if it was listed, but I was doing research and it was saying that the root was poisonous, but you could use the root if it was boiled in small amounts for this to treat something. We don't recommend if it's poisonous, unless you're with someone that's done this and is extremely knowledgeable, please don't take the risk and do it. It's like we were just saying earlier, so many parts of the plants can be toxic or poisonous to humans. Don't
a lot
take
of
the risk.
times, what I've read too is things can be toxic, but they're fine up to a point. Once you consume too much, that's when you can get lots more sick from that.
Or wasn't it like pokeweed? Like the leaves are highly poisonous, but if you boil them for a certain amount of time, then it's actually
milkweed's the same thing. Milkweed is not gonna be very good to you unless you blanch it and boil it and get you leach a lot of those toxins out, and then it's perfectly fine. There's a lot of plants that are like that where even think about a lot of the vegetables that we're eating on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of them you don't really want to eat raw.
Like potato, I think is one you're not supposed to eat raw.
Potato. I've taken a bite of raw potato. It's not very good.
As a kid, I used to eat a ton of raw potato. Because I just did. So maybe that's part of my issue, part of my issues.
But yeah, there's a lot of things, even with our day-to-day diet, that you don't want to consume raw. You want to cook it first. So just make sure if you are going to actually try some of this stuff, that's our big disclaimer, is make sure you're finding other sources. You aren't just saying, Tom and Fran said it was okay. Don't
please be careful with that. So you want to do a pod deck?
Yeah, let's do it.
Now, I did look through ahead of time. And we are starting to run very short. And I did look to see that they don't have a second edition of this. So I thought it might be easier because they're getting harder because it's a lot of the ones that we passed on. I'd give you a couple options.
Okay.
And see if we could make it. See, and some of these are things that we've already kind of done. Like 4 things you might not know about me. We kind of do that in the secrets. So maybe that's not a good one. So let's do it between these two. Describe your perfect day or talk about your guilty pleasures. I was thinking if we did guilty pleasures, what if we talked about guilty plant pleasures that necessarily aren't straight species? It could be cultivars or non-natives that are a guilty pleasure.
Oh, it sounds like you want to do that one.
No, I'm just throwing. I had an idea.
Let's do that one since you already have some ideas for that.
Okay. So yeah, like I thought, like I know for me, one guilty pleasure for some native plants where I go with cultivars is I do love different cultivars of euchera, coral bells.
Okay.
Is that the native? So because the flowers look like coral bells, like there's deep red, chocolate colored foliage or like veined foliage. Same with Tiarella, foam flower. There's a lot of like great foliage selections for that that I really love. And I know we've talked about this too, that Amsonia hubrechtii isn't native here at all, but thrives very well here. And that's like a big native guilty pleasure. Like I know it's way out of its native zone, but I love that plant. Yeah. So those are ones that I'm really going against the grain when because we always talk about trying to get local provenance, straight species, and but if I ever stray from that, those are the kind of things that I stray on.
Yep. I have one that you hadn't mentioned already. And because I was going to bring up the Amsonia, I have some of that in my home garden. I just planted some Euchra and what's the other one you just said?
Oh, Tiarella.
Oh, Tiarella. Yeah, I just planted some cultivars of that. And that was primarily because that was off the vine, was cultivars
and
of it.
that's part of it too. Yeah.
But the big one for me, which I still just keep going back and forth on. Every time I say I'm going to get it, then I'm like, well, maybe I won't. But is American Beautyberry, because it's not quite native here. It's native in like Maryland and South, and it's not native here. But I think it's such a cool plant. It has so many wildlife benefits. It's so beautiful. I really like it a lot. But I guess I've already bastardized my garden with all some other cultivars already.
No, but
I don't know why I keep going back and forth on it.
It's funny though, because when I lived in Delaware, I actually had a few selections that I had gotten from a conference at the University of Delaware, and I had like a white berry one, some different things, some unusual bigger berries, and another thing it's native more south of here is Calacantas Floridus, which I'm trying to remember the common name of that one. I want to say sweet shrub or something like that. It's got a very fragrant flower, like a blood red type, like reddish brown flower.
Carolina allspice.
That's it. Yeah. That's another one that I love.
There's an excellent episode of the Native Plant Podcast from probably 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, just about that plant. And that's how I learned a lot about it, where I hadn't heard much about it. And then I brought it up to my dad, and he's like, yeah, we got one growing right there.
Yeah.
It's growing in their yard.
It's one of those plants that if you're in the industry, if you're in the horticultural industry, one of the textbooks is The Guide to Woody Plants by Michael Durr. And it's for a textbook, it's very opinionated. and that's one of the plants that he raves about, like absolutely raves about all the time. And when he loves something and when he hates something, like look at a flowering almond. If you want to see a scathing description of a plant, that's a perfect example. But that's in a lot of the horticultural industry, that's what a lot of people use as a Bible for identification. So it's but
and Fran, I'll tell you too that I just saw another common name for Calacantas floridus is eastern sweep shrub.
Okay.
So
yeah,
it's both.
So it's, I think these are all things that we love. And, and fortunately they're native. They're just not native to our area. They're native either a little further south or a little further west. But, and some of these cultivars, like we acknowledge how tough it is to find street species sometime, even though that's what we're in the business of. So, I just thought it would be interesting to talk about some of the things that are a guilty pleasure for us that, we always talk about, don't hold people to your standards. We're not perfect. We may be, more native than a lot of other people, but we still make personal exceptions too. So, just remember that when dealing with your neighbors or friends. So believe it or not, Tom, we are just shy of an hour.
Okay.
Has that ever happened?
Yeah, we've been less than an hour before.
We're
how shy of an hour are we?
Like 2 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Like we're going to be over an hour. But I will say this. I was looking, surprisingly, our top 10 episodes are pretty much our longest episodes. Like it's the ones that are like an hour and a half to 2 hours. Yeah. That's what really shocks me, that those are most popular. Yeah. But I wonder if that's because it took a couple days to listen to and they spent more time.
I think so. Is it takes a little bit longer to listen to. There's typically a lot more content. It's not just us babbling on it. There's some more deeper conversations. So I think it opens us up a little bit.
And I could be wrong, and I'm sure there's people that would disagree with this statement, but I think technically when we go that long, we would never let an episode go that long if the content wasn't there. Yep. Like I think we know when we exhaust it, like good content, and start to draw it to an end. Mm-hmm. Like we should probably do right now.
Yeah. So. Yep, that is it. So, but well, I guess I will do it. That is it. Thank you for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed listening to The Buzz. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Native Plants Healthy Planet, presented by Pinelands Nursery.
Thank you to RJ Comer for our Buzz theme music, which it's Nightly Suicide, and I feel that's synonymous with our Buzz episodes. Make sure you stream or buy RJ's music on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you consume your music. we actually do have new music coming up in the new year for Rooted Discussions. So we've decided we're going to keep our Buzz theme music, and we're going to keep our Meet the Guest theme music with Egocentric Plastic Men. And our next Rooted Discussion, we're going to introduce brand new theme music that I have a feeling is going to end up sticking, and we'll probably tie it down there. So follow us on Twitter at Pineland Nursery, Facebook at Pinelands Nursery NJ, Instagram at Pinelands Nursery or Native Plants _ Healthy Planet, and at YouTube at Pinelands Nursery. Don't forget about the question and comment line. It's been a little quiet recently, so we'd like to see that pick up a little bit. Call us at 215-346-6189. I will repeat that, 215-346-6189. Ask a question or leave a comment. We're going to play that comment or question on a future episode of The Buzz, and we're going to answer it to the best of our ability. And the Native Plants Healthy Planet Facebook group is getting close to, I mean, it's a lot closer to 1,000. We're going to hit that soon, I think, with the way that it's growing. So, and again, even with the opening of the Facebook group, everything has been so wonderful. And I love that about our group. And we get a lot of compliments about how helpful and polite our group is. So I'm really proud of all of you. Let's keep that going over there.
Yeah. You can now buy shirts and listen to Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast directly at www.nativeplantshealthyplanet.com. We have that banner at the top of our website. You can click that to go to our Teespring store, and that's where you can pick out shirts. I thought about running a Black Friday promotion, but the reason I don't think we're gonna, I may still decide to, but I don't think we're going to. Of course, you're listening to this on Black Friday, is because all it would do is just cut into the amount of dollars that these organizations would be getting.
Yeah,
so
I don't
if you
want
to get something for Black Friday, Cyber Monday, think of it more as a Giving Tuesday gift. You aren't necessarily, all the proceeds from these shirts are going to these organizations. So,
and I do want to give it, you know what, and I apologize because this probably could have been for the next Buzz, but I want to give a shout out. We had someone reach out. Joe from Seattle reached out to us this week and said that everyone in his office would have one of these shirts if they would just give him their sizes. So give Joe the sizes so he can totally outfit the office. That would be wonderful.
Yeah,
that would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would be fantastic.
And thank you for touching base with us.
Yeah, that was really nice. Even if there was a little misunderstanding.
There's a little
we
didn't
know what was going on for a second, but we figured it out.
No, but we appreciate you touching base with us and communicating with us and having a back and forth. And we had a wonderful conversation. We appreciate all the kind words.
So if you enjoy what you're hearing, please leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts, if that's where you listen, or wherever you listen. If you're able to leave a review, we ask that you please do so, because it just helps us get our message out there a little bit farther, gets more people interested in native plants. So if you're able to do it, that's one reason that it helps us. On top of that, I will give you a nice little shout out on the listener shout out section of our episodes.
I like that. So Tom, it's actually your turn this week for a secret. Do you have one?
Yes, I do.
All right.
And it's not necessarily native plant related. It was just a kind of a cool experience. But I mentioned before a couple times that I played lacrosse in college, and then I coached lacrosse when I got a little older. But when I was still playing, there's a big lacrosse tournament out in Vail, Colorado, and the team I was supposed to go with dropped out, but I already had tickets booked and all this stuff. So I ended up going on like this free agents page for the tournament and got picked up by a team that was called Team 21.
Okay.
And it was sponsored by Coors Light. I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. I'm 21 years old.
Yeah.
We're sponsored by Coors Light. There's got to be some kind of benefit
to
this. And it was a much bigger benefit than I thought, because Pete Coors, if you're a little older, you probably remember him from the Coors commercials.
Yeah.
His son played lacrosse in college, and he was the one who ran this team.
Oh.
So we were actually at all our team functions were at the Coors Vail ski cottage.
Oh, that's awesome.
And a couple guys that I made friends with out there, we were all doing our best version of what's it, Coors, the banquet beer. We were just really doing our best impressions of it. And we built up a little liquid courage and had Pete Coors cornered at this barbecue and said, hey, we could probably save you a lot of money if you use us to do these voiceovers. And we the one guy was really good at it.
Yeah.
So he did it, and he's like, that was terrible. He's like, what's the guy's name who does it? Sam, the cowboy movie
Oh,
guy.
Sam Elliott.
He's
yeah.
like, we pay Sam Elliott a lot of money to do this, and yeah, he's a professional. You guys are terrible. But no, that was a lot of fun. And it was just a cool experience that I still look back on. And
That is awesome.
there's not a lot of people who probably can go to a bar and like any Coors product is on the Coors tab. That was kind of cool.
You know, I totally appreciate that because given my social anxiety, I don't know if I would have had the courage to just go on a free agent page and take a trip out to Vail. Now I know you knew other people. I'm sure your brother.
My brother
and your
was
dad
going.
went.
Yeah, my dad went.
Yeah. So
I think my mom went too.
But to go and just get put on a team with people you don't know and have a cool experience like that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, it definitely worked out. I made the right choice.
Yes,
I
yes,
didn't
you
play
did.
as much because we had a really good team, and I was a backup goalie for that team, so I didn't get to play as much as I would have with other teams. But it definitely was worth it
You had
for
a good time.
the team bonding part of it. So
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Great secret. You just upped the ante for next one. For me.
yeah. So again, we hope you enjoyed everything. Please leave a review. It really, really helps. With that, thank you, everyone. I'm Tom.
And I am Fran. Thank you again, everyone, for tuning in. We will see you again next time. I think it's Meet the Guest, I believe. We haven't gotten it finalized yet, but I'm pretty sure that's what it is. So thank you again for joining us. Until next time, keep it native.
Thank you for listening to the Native Plants Healthy Planet podcast, presented by Pinelands Nursery. Remember to like, share, follow, and comment.